Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Gee, nothing happened on the weekend. No trades, no news, not a thing. Just kidding. Lots of stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about baseball for a minute. I just wrote an article on Sportsology because I still feel like if you want to fix baseball, then please just don't watch the game. It's not for you. They had a game end the other day, and I'm not against the pitch clock, but it ended with the pitch clock violation. And I'm thinking, what a great way to go see a game, spend $85 on a game, and have a game end that way possibly, because, it's going to take players a while to kind of get used to this rule. They're not going to just get it overnight. There were like 35 violations. But again, that's not the only issue here. I keep hearing my kids can't pay attention. And honestly, my answer was your kids should pay attention, because someday when they have to work, they're going to have to pay attention. So be a better parent. That has nothing to do with baseball. Again, you watch the NFL. The NFL has tons of minutes where nothing is going on. But the NFL gets away with it because you can watch it once a week. And for once a week, yeah, I'll put up with it because it's once a week. But people don't even talk about the following of baseball every day, how good that is, how the announcers become sort of like your friends in your living room. So I wrote about all that, and it's not an old man thing. It's just that's the way the sport is. And the further you drift away from it, the more problems I think they're going to have. That's just me.
Kev, you go first, because I'll spew my negativity in a minute.
Yeah, I have watched all the games that I can on MLB Network, and I'm really surprised at how well the pitchers have taken this, because they've had several in-game interviews, and they all say the same thing. It's really not that big a deal. He said there's for a small number of the deliberate pitchers, they'll have some adjustment, but, it's really not going to cause as many issues for that. He said for the hitters, they've got a little bit of adjustment because they got to get ready a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. I saw the play in particular, and the guy was just getting set and just didn't hustle. He just forgot. I think that you gotta be ready. And I saw a guy call a timeout, and everybody started laughing because nobody had called the timeout. He asked for time in the batter's box, and nobody had done that for the entire game. So it seemed the guy goes, this seems strange, that the guy, asked for timeout. So anyway, I think it's not going to be that big a deal. I'm really curious to see, though, what happens with the defensive alignment rule change, which I have not seen much about that.
No, I had watched a few games and I hadn't seen much about it either.
Yeah, it hasn't really seemed to be that big a deal. I mean, I know in Detroit, for example, they're concerned about it because Scope is a great if I can get to the ball, I'm going to catch it guy, and he's got a good arm, but he doesn't have any range. So he needs to play. He needs to play deep. If he can play deep, he can get to a lot more because he's got the arm to do it. So whether or not he moves is really dependent on how he handles this shift. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, positionally, they'll have to adjust him positionally to compensate for each batter. Like if he hits up the middle, that type of thing, they'll have to be more sensitive to that because of the new restrictions. I'll just say this: it's like, I'm resistant to change, and I know this is going to be something that is going to be traumatic for me as a baseball fan watching it this season. One thing that I wanted to watch the Yankees opening spring training game in Tampa, I believe it was. They had a split squad, and it wasn't on the Yes Network. It was on the Yes app. So I go to the Yes app, and similar to your problems with hockey, Russ, it was geo-blocking me. Mm-hmm. Now, Buffalo is 7 hours away from New York. Mm-hmm. So why would that? I don't believe they're going to be broadcasting actual games. It's either going to be on the Yes Network or on Amazon or on Apple. But, I mean, for those interested in watching games that early in the season, you should make it a little
acting really funky, so I can't hear you guys yet.
We can hear you.
There we are.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, make it a little more convenient for your fans. That's all I have to say.
And my last thing is, just because a game is quicker that doesn't mean it's been a better game. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Just one for those who are just big sports fans. Take a look today at the highlights of the guy that got 71 points last night, because he hit one from way downtown. It was unbelievable that he just kind of came over the half court and let it fly.
Who was it? I don't even know.
It was I'm drawing a blank.
Let's see.
What team?
He got 71 points. Yeah,
I'm looking it up.
he was out the West Coast. He's
Damian Lillard. Yeah, Lillard's a big time scorer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
okay, we got some trades to discuss.
All right, let's do it.
A couple things to talk about. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, February 22nd, 2023.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Wow.
Kevin Allen.
I like it. The snappy intros. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It's the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in the comings and goings of the hockey world. Where to start?
Let's start with the trades. We got
to start Timo Meier, because that's the biggest trade.
Not the Isaac Ratcliffe deal. Yeah, let's start with Timo Meier.
And I didn't have time today, but for the trade deadline show, I'm going to bring up the show that we did in November when I told you that the Devils were hot on Timo Meier. This was their main target, and Mike and you weren't on the show, Kevin. I looked at it, but Mike and Russ just ripped me to shreds about it the entire.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, so I think you'll have an easy time finding that.
Wait, this differentiates between the other times that I read.
Oh yeah, no, you just said there's no reason the Devils would get Timo Meier. Timo Meier would never go to the Devils. All these things. It was a fun show to watch. We'll go back and I'll bring it up when I need it.
Wonderful.
It's a little thing to save in my back pocket. But the trade. Let's talk about the trade, Kevin.
Well, let me just say this first. Yeah. I will not try to pronounce most of the names in this trade because they're unpronounceable. I mean, the main, Meyer goes to the Devils. Scott Harrington, I can pronounce that one. Zachary Imond, Santeri Hataka, and then you get into Russian ones. I
just call him Shaq.
Yeah, going to San Jose. Andreas Janssen, former Leaf. Fabian Zetterlund, Nikita Okatuk, and Shaq, along with a 2023 first-round pick, a conditional 2023 first-round pick, a conditional second-round pick in 2024, and a seventh-round pick. So this was 9 players and 4 draft picks.
Yeah, good trade.
Yeah, and Meyer's salary was 50% retained. Kev, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm with the mainstream on this in that this was a really good deal for the Devils. This is less than, there was no Holtz didn't get moved in the deal. I mean, the fact that Holtz didn't get, you knew they were drawing the line on Mercer because, if they won't even give up Holtz, they're not going to give a guy who's already established in the NHL in this deal.
Right.
But I know San Jose Sharks fans, just from reading social media, are upset over this because I think they really thought this was going to be a big haul. And it didn't help that right after that, the Tampa Bay Lightning gave up the farm to get a guy with 5 goals. And
we'll talk about that in a second.
Has 31 goals and, on his way to a 40-plus, goal season. But I would say this. It'll be a little better if the Devils, and this is a big if, I thought this would be tied to whether or not they re-signed Meier, but their conditional second-round pick is tied to whether they make the conference finals. Right. And that's a big ask. Not that the Devils, don't have some talent, but this is a pretty darn competitive Eastern
Conference. It's a big ask for anyone in the East.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
There's the top 6 teams in the NHL are all in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, the East is nuts. The East is
there's never been a year like this I can remember. This is insanity. This is absolutely and it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And we have more and more players to the East, and it's just crazy.
The only thing in this deal, they gave up the 2023 first, and the only protection is if you win the lottery and they're in the top 2, then it moves to 2024. So they're getting the 2023 first, Russ. And the thing I look at this deal. I'm not saying, maybe Greer was behind the 8 ball here in the sense that, he needed to move Meier, but he didn't really need to move Meier because he had that protection of the qualifying offer. But he doesn't get Holtz, he doesn't get Nemec, he doesn't get Hughes, and probably what I said on the show when we were talking about this in November, if I'm Mike Greer and I'm not getting any one of those 3, I'm walking away. But he didn't walk away, and he made this deal.
No, so one thing I did say on a previous show here that a lot of this has turned into like baseball deals in the sense that teams are getting like the fourth best prospect. They're not getting the number one. They're not getting the number two.
So they're here last week.
And Shaq is like the fourth best. But in this trade, you do have to do better than the fourth best. Now, they feel like Shaq's higher rated than Holtz. I think they're mistaken. I think Shaq will make it to the NHL, but the problem is he's a riverboat gambler. He has turnovers. He has some, I would say, some recognition to work on. Yeah, he's doing fine in the KHL. I get it. It's going to be an adjustment for him because we'll see.
I'm sure he'll give up his job as the riverboat gambler. He just has to give 2 weeks' notice to come over.
As far as Zetterlund's been a little disappointing, but he has some skills. But again, nothing more than bottom 6 as far as in the NHL. So, you look at it and you say, wow, San Jose really could have gotten more, or at least could have picked better off of the Devils roster. That's the way I would say it. Now, the picks could make a big difference. So, I mean, look, that's where it's going to tell the story. But they could have hit a grand slam if they had gotten a better player and the picks worked out. That's all.
The thing is this, like, we're thinking about it this way, like, Timo Meier is not old.
No,
26. So the point of this is like, it's like, the picks, those kind of picks mean more to me with a player that's 31, when you're giving up a first round draft pick than a 26-year-old, like when we see those 31-year-olds, go for a first round draft pick.
You'd rather the roster players be better, which I agree with if that's what.
Yeah, Sharagovich didn't give him up either, which is also kind of surprising. Right. And the whole thing. But to me, Kevin, the most interesting thing, because maybe this is selfish from our perspective, but I don't think it is, because I want to bring out to like the fan, to everybody out there who watches, and the hockey fans who watch, who are like HockeyBuzz in the first place. Sorry about that. Is this? I always I try to figure out. I spend most of my life deciphering GM's minds, like trying to figure out, in my head, playing these games, and I learned, over time you learn them. We learned a little bit about Greer yesterday for the first time, and I thought it was the first time we really learned something about him. And this, in my impression from talking to people all over the place yesterday, was that he's sly. He does make a lot of interesting moves, and I do think that he tried to play Vegas against New Jersey as best he could yesterday. I really don't think there was much to that. And when the Buchnevich thing happened, it was obvious there wasn't much to that. But he also,
Barbashev?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Barbashev. I'm sorry, not Barbashev, not Buchnevich. I'm sorry. Yeah, when that happened, it was obvious. But that didn't happen until later in the day. And there was a lot of nerve-wracking. Like, there was a point at which I know that the Devils were told in the middle, like probably 2 hours before a trade was going to happen, when they thought it was getting pretty close. They were told we're going to take some time weighing our options, which is like an interesting, which for the Devils at that point was really scary, because that's like not what they wanted to hear, right? Like they thought they had tied this thing up the night before. So he really did try to get the Blues to do, he tried to get these things. And I think the only reason I bring this up, Kevin, is because Karlsson's going on right now. And I think that that's important to look at in terms of that.
Yeah, that may be, although I don't think that, to be honest with you, I don't think Greer handled this as well as he could have. Sly is not the word that I would use. Right. To me, it seemed he was just inexperienced, and that doesn't mean he's not going to be a great, GM at some point. It just means in this, like the fact that there seemed to be better options out there than the one he settled on.
Do we know what Carolina offered? Do we have an idea or no?
No, I don't. And
that's the only one I think that was legitimate. Honestly, I think Carolina was the only one that really got anywhere from what I was hearing.
But I mean, it just seemed like, it didn't feel like he had a real good handle. I mean, I could be wrong on this, but it doesn't feel like he had a good handle on the Devils prospects.
Yeah, no, I think he got taken to the woodshed on this one. I mean,
it's interesting. You guys are interested. I would disagree. Can I disagree with you guys just for a second? Then you make your point, Mike. Okay. Please. But I listen. I agree that he could have gotten more, but we don't know that he could have gotten more. First of all, that's something we can't ever say because we don't know.
Let me just make this point, because this is the point I was trying to make before.
Please.
Which is this: if he waited, he would have gotten more.
Right.
So, and he didn't need to make that deal now.
Right.
There was no reason to do that. And he did. That's where I thought the real inexperience came in.
Yeah, he needed to take the stance that Bill Armstrong is taking with Chychrun. If I don't get what I want, then I'm because with Chychrun he's got 2 years. With Meier, he's got the qualifying offer. I know it's $10 million, but he's even got till the summer to make that deal. The interest in Meier is not going to dissipate. I think this was prototypical of an I'm not saying he's a bad general manager, but this was a first big move. And in this instance, I think he didn't get the value for a very valuable piece.
I don't think he gets more if he waits. I honestly don't.
He does.
I agree with that.
I mean, that qualifying offer becomes a big thing.
Well, first of all, you get Steve Yzerman in. Steve Yzerman has a lot of assets, right, but he couldn't do it now.
Right.
But he could in the off season. I think Carolina would be able to do something in the off season they couldn't do now. They couldn't move anybody off their roster. So anyway, that's why I thought, again, he still could end up being a great general manager. I just thought in this case, he had the option to wait. Like when you ask the GMs around the league, they all wondered why he didn't wait. So,
do we know if Timo Meier did he have a no moving clause or anything like that? Did he have to waive contracts or anything?
I don't believe so.
No.
He didn't, right? So,
no.
Yeah. Now, the one thing he could, the Devils can lose on this is if they can't re-sign, Meier.
Yeah. So, I think, and that's funny because they talked about that. And I do think that they will get him resigned. Like just from talking to people yesterday. Like I think.
To be honest, even if they didn't get him resigned, they'll survive this. They have a deep system. They didn't lose anything that they were counting on for next year.
Right.
Yeah, and it's 2 years that they'll still have. I mean, this year and the next year that they'll have. So
yeah, that's probably worth what they gave up, right? But I think I do think that he wanted to go there. I think he did want to go there. I do think that was obvious. And I mean, that's at least what I heard. And this is Claude Lemieux being his agent, dealing with the Devils. Where a lot of agents, like I can't tell you the amount of times I've talked to people at the Devils who have said we were just taken advantage of, or we were used, or we were strung along. Claude Lemieux wasn't going to.
When the field got limited to just the Devils, like Kevin said, he could have even just waited till deadline day and just see if somebody jumps in. Because at that point, you were down to one team. Like you knew you were down. When Carolina was out, you were down to one team.
I mean, I know my what I say on the show.
No, those first round picks weren't going to be around on deadline day. Like that's the issue. That was my issue. Like the Devils might hold out their first round pick in hopes to get him, but the other other teams that will give up first round picks won't be giving them up. They'll be giving them up before deadline day.
I know. Like my stance on the show sometimes is unrealistic, but when you're talking about a player of impact like Meier, I think you have to be a little ornery and say, okay, I need this to start in this deal, and if I don't get this, then let's just not talk. It's like, I mean, if they didn't believe in Holtz, then then Nemec and Hughes were then you needed to get somebody like Sharon Govich on top of the guys that they're getting. If you didn't get that, then you walk away from that deal and you wait till the summer. So now switching to the other monstrous deal.
Well, let's not close this one yet.
Yeah,
there is another point here that I think kind of sums up my position, and that is if you look at the two deals that everybody was talking about yesterday, Jeannot and this one. Right. In all of those instances, there are 4 teams involved in those threes. In 3 instances, the Tampa Bay Lightning, everybody's the wow factor on that is, oh my God, look at their bottom 6 now. Look how hard they are going to be playing against.
Yeah.
So there's a buzz about what they've done. Like there's a wow factor.
Right.
Yes. You look at what Nashville got. Wow, 5 picks. Getting a former first round pick. He was first round, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Foot. And then they did great. This guy's only got 5 goals this year. That he was great last year. They get kudos. You look at the Devils deal with San Jose. Everybody's saying, "Wow, getting Timo Meier here. He's going to be able to play with Hughes. It's going to be exciting." Everybody's saying, "Boy, did they do good." Nobody is saying that I know of, like, "Wow, boy, what the Sharks did out of that." Like that's my only point. Now, this could still end up, as Russ said, depending on what happens with the draft picks, depending if the Devils re-sign. But I'm with Russ. Even if they only get 2 years, I still think this is a good deal. But nobody that I know of, except maybe you, is saying.
I actually talked to people who thought that they got a good return. It's funny. We got to I would talk to you on the phone later about this because there's some interesting different topics that came up with this. I think that. There's some other stuff too that I can't even bring up on the show. But
we have a trade. We have a trade. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Chicago Blackhawks.
McCabe.
Jake McCabe, Sam Lafferty.
Good move, Toronto.
Wow. Okay, the Maple Leafs trade Joey Anderson, Pavel Gogolev, who was a an undrafted free agent signing, their 2025 first round pick. They bit Russ. This is the response to the Janot. And a 2026 second round pick for Jake McCabe, Sam Lafferty, a 2024 fifth, and a 2025 fifth. Wow.
That is something. They
Boston, Tampa, Toronto, draft capital, schmaft capital. It doesn't mean.
But here's what I do want to say about that. So, because I did write something about that just a little while ago for another website. It's easy to root on the GM when he's trying to keep up with the Joneses and trade away the draft capital and everything else. But the day after your team's out and you go back and read about it, and then when you're actually covering the draft or at the draft or watching it on TV as a fan, that's when you get a lot of buyer's remorse. Now, with this trade, I don't think it's horrible what Dubas did, but the fact that McCabe is always hurt, I think he gave up too much for it. I know Lafferty was his hot property. Lafferty's okay. You can plug him in. He's not going to hurt you. He has experience, so I get that. But McCabe has to be good here for this deal to be good for Dubas.
Kevin, if you have to write something about this real quick, we'll just talk about it for a little bit.
Well, the thing is, I'd like to know where all of a sudden Jake McCabe and Lafferty play, because Lafferty is a fourth. He's been playing more second, third line for Chicago. He's a fourth line guy. But who's gonna sit for the Leafs?
I think he's more depth. I don't think they're going to sit anybody for him.
Well, I mean, they might.
No, he's got playoff experience. I think they got him because
he's physical.
Yeah, but you get injuries and stuff like that. So
but who's gonna sit for McCabe? Are they gonna sit Rasmus Sandin? Are they gonna sit
Sandin or Liljegren? It's gonna be one of the guys.
So I mean. I've been skeptical of, and here's the key here. Jake McCabe, 50% retained for the next 2 years. After this year, he's a $2 million defenseman instead of a $4 million defenseman.
Sure, that makes a big difference.
And that's why
he has to stay healthy.
Right. And he has this year, but he's had a massive shoulder injury that ended his season in Buffalo. He had an ACL injury, and he had a cervical spine injury in training camp that he came back from really quickly. So he's been steady, and he's physical, but he's not good. He's
a shot blocker. He does good things. He just has to stay healthy.
But Toronto, Boston, Toronto, Tampa, the Rangers now with
the Devils.
Everybody at the Devils, everybody's going all in.
Well, not everybody, like the top 5 teams.
Well, that's what I mean. That's
top 5 or 6. They're the ones that are.
Who hasn't gone all in yet is Carolina, right?
And I'm wondering who's left for them to get.
Yeah.
Who is their target now? I mean, I actually heard Gavrikov to them. One GM speculated that with me and said that he had heard that was possible.
Well, they do want a defenseman, so. That's
got to go somewhere, right? Like he's sitting out there, and that's something else we got to talk about at some point during the trade deadline. I had a discussion with someone at the NHL because there's a real upheaval about these players being held out of games. It's starting to get a little bit over the top a little bit, and so I talked to somebody at the NHL yesterday who said that there could be a rule about that eventually that changes that a little bit. Like you have to be.
Yeah, I'm with you. I said this before. It's people say, well, it's no different than when you rest them at the end. And I say no, because these guys are out for multiple games.
And they're not out with there's no deal in place for Chychrun. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's like, right. It's like Patrick Kane. Okay, you hold him out. There's a deal pretty much the NHL calls you up and they can just say, anonymous league talked about, and we got a deal in place. That's why we're holding him out. But when the NHL calls up and says, what's going on with Chychrun? We're trying to make a deal. Well, you don't have a deal, so play him. That's basically
there's 3 of them. There's Kane and Gavrikov and Chychrun who didn't have a deal and still don't have a deal. So
I'll give you a potential for Carolina.
I think Kane. We'll get to Kane, right? But that I think they can make the argument for the NHL, because the whole thing with Kane, right? What I heard with Kane, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like they're holding him out to the very last minute because of caps. Like because of cap reasons. The second they trade for him, they've got to put him on their cap. So the Rangers are waiting until I heard Friday
Yeah, Kane's got his feet up at home. He's in his living
Well,
room.
I mean, didn't they sort of spell out like that's why they played with only 18?
Oh, the Rangers game.
Right. But no,
Yeah.
but
that was
to me,
almost
so the NHL's
undoable
upset
what
about that.
happened
The
in
NHL
that
can sit
game.
back and say, well, there's a salary cap issue there. We get that. But there's a deal in place. There's like Chychrun and Gavrikov. There's nothing. Like Gavrikov, there might have been with Boston for a bit, but there's nothing with Chychrun. You know what I mean? And
No, I don't like it either. But
Listen,
I think they may have to
Ranger
prove in the
game
future. They may have to prove the NHL they got something in place.
Yeah, the Ranger game was almost a debacle yesterday because of the cap.
Yeah.
But that's at this point, it's small potatoes in this conversation. But I will say this: I'll give you two guys that I think Carolina could still go after.
Yeah,
Klingberg and JVR, because they have the 23rd ranked power play, and that's something that they could fix with both of those guys.
Who was the first guy?
Klingberg.
Klingberg. Yeah. I'm not sure about Klingberg, but
I they want to fix their power play. Like it's up to them.
I want to give Montreal some credit, which is I'm sure people are rolling over in their grave when they hear me.
Yeah, guys.
But
let people start their recorders first, Mike.
Yeah, there you go. But the Gurianov for Dadonov deal, I mean, okay, it pays off for Dallas because Dadonov is a veteran guy. They retain 50% of the salary. You know, he plugs in maybe on a third line with them, maybe power play. You know, he's a good veteran. You know, he played with Vegas last year, so
he scored goals for Vegas, big goals.
Scored big points. Gurianov, I mean, anybody who watched the Stars in the bubble in their run, that guy was a demon, and he did the last.
Does he not feel like somebody who will explode in Montreal?
Yes.
Like
he's called Kovalev. He's like a Kovalev.
Exactly. I feel now this, and I want to bring us up. The Flyers lost out on this one because, like I reported last week, there was a big rumor going on, and it was exactly the same rumor. But it was JVR for Gurianov. With them holding half the salary. I don't know what happened, but I know that
I can tell you what happened. Dadonov's a better goal scorer than JVR. That's the problem.
Maybe that's what they went with. But But this is we knew that Gurianov was available, and
I mean this is good for both teams, really. You know, I mean the Vegas got the guy they're pretty comfortable with. He actually played pretty well there. Both of them were having poor seasons this year, and the hope is that. Their new homes, they'll be better. But, that Montreal gets the younger player, the bigger player, so. But he's only had that one good year. That's the only problem.
That is but he is one of those guys. He's got a great shot. And all of a sudden, he could just score 3-4 goals in a couple games.
He could, yeah. Yeah,
and he has a young Russian. He has another young Russian in Montreal with him, right? So you have like another, guy which can help him. Maybe they very much could be familiar with each other. Obviously, they're not that far apart, right?
I mean, I'd rather have the trade that Montreal made than getting like a third round pick or something.
Right.
So I'm going to mention at the Ranger trade because the chat room has mentioned it just real quick. That was a dump of Vitaly Kravtsov, and it was horrible the way they did it. Will Lockwood's not a great NHLer. He's barely a depth guy, and was it a 7th round pick? This guy was.
There is no confidence in him around the league, Russ. I talk to people about this.
Yeah, I get it, but you know what? Here's the thing: it doesn't matter what the confidence is around the league. It only takes one team to actually say, you know what, this guy can skate. He's got a two-way game. Let's just try him. Look, I told everybody in the draft I wanted Wahlstrom, but I'm just going to tell you, I'd like to see Kravtsov get a chance with somebody, and I think he will now. But the idea is, what they took for him. Over the summer, they could have gotten a 2nd or 3rd round pick, but they waited until now. And because they didn't play him, now you've got the report you do where the confidence is down around the league. During the summer, the confidence was still good.
That's right.
I talked to somebody who had a great quote about this. I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to hear your opinion on this too. This is the continuation. This is a Vancouver fan who's like really pissed off. The continuation of the Pittsburgh Penguin dung of the Vancouver Canucks. He's like, they're going out and they're getting Rutherford's getting finesse, getting speed, getting skill, and giving up Horvat, and Besser is giving up like the soul of the team in their mind. And but when you side with Pettersson, and now like Kravtsov and the other Russian they have there, whose name escapes me for a second, who's doing really well this year. Is it possible, Kev, that they are definitely going in a finesse speed way?
Well, for sure. But I'm totally with Russ on this. Like I saw that and I thought it was appalling. Yeah. Especially given the fact that, Russ and I have joked about this, but there's truth to this, that always in the NHL, you feel that that other teams' failures in developing players would not be yours.
Right.
You always believe you can develop that player.
Yeah.
And nobody was willing to do that for Krasov. That's how far he had fallen, because always there's teams out there that think, well, the Rangers just didn't do it right. They didn't treat him right. We'll turn him around, and that's all they could get for him like that.
That's true. And I mean, I don't. But the people I ask people about him. I said, have you seen him play? Like, the people don't like him, and whether or not that's right or wrong, Russ, they have their predetermined opinion.
As an example, if you look at his KHL stats, they're pretty good. So,
and that was going to be my point, Russ, is the fact that his value was higher when he wasn't in the NHL.
I also think the Rangers got screwed here by having to do this trade.
But they didn't have to. That's my point, and that's where Kevin.
They did. Maybe that. Yeah, with the Patrick Kane thing, they didn't have to do it early.
He could have looked ahead, and Chris Drury could have been honest with himself and knew that he really didn't want him there, and knew that Gallant probably wasn't going to play him, and he should have taken a second or a third round pick for him. That's what he should have done.
Now, the other two major deals that were made, like the Barbashev move for Zach Dean. Russ, you know more about Zach Dean than any of us do. I mean, but Barbashev's solid, energetic forward. I mean, he isn't going to replace Mark Stone, and they still have the room to do something else. I would say a goaltender, but Zach Dean is a good prospect. This makes sense for Vegas because they're sort of an all-in team too.
No, listen, Zach Dean is a really good prospect. Like, I think he could be as good and possibly better than Brisson. I do. He's got great acceleration. He doesn't get seen a lot as far as he did now in the top prospects game. I believe he was in that. And so he did get noticed in that about a year ago.
Wow.
Or maybe this year. I can't remember. It might have been this year's game. World Juniors. I think he was on the World Junior team. Fast, really good puck handler. Definitely could score goals. Feisty. Like, this guy can play a terrific NHL game. He can, and I think he could be a second liner. I had him as a first-round talent last year, and I think St. Louis got themselves a really good player here. He's going to take a couple more years, don't get me wrong, but I think they did really well on this return.
And Kev, the other one, I mean, we talked about.
Let's talk about Karlsson for a second. When we're second with that one for a second, if I could, okay? Because you're going to go another trade, right? Another name. So Kevin, Barbashev, I feel like I want to know your opinion. So I felt like he brings a little bit of like what they lost with Alex Tuck in a weird way, like that. I feel like there's been something like Barbashev actually has quite a bit of like grit to him in a little way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's a frisky player,
right? And which was Tuck was too, And
and I like that trade from a Vegas perspective, and I've heard good things about Dean as well. He wasn't really on my radar. Russ knows him far better than I do. But just in the last 24 hours, I've had people that I've talked to around the league said, Dean's pretty good. Like the Blues, that's a good pickup for them. So I think this was a case of again, both teams got value like nobody.
Yeah, this is a good trade.
You can sell this in St. Louis, and you can sell it in Vegas. So I like this, and I agree with you. I mean, I think it's kind of what Vegas needs. Get a little more bite and still getting more depth of scoring, which they do need. And it's just a matter, as Mike points out, about their goaltending. What I don't know the answer to is and this is what I hate about the Vegas system, or not Vegas, the NHL system on injuries. Like, we have no idea when Logan Thompson is coming back.
No,
week to week. Like, what does that even mean? It's hard to know, like where they're at without knowing how long that they really expect Logan Thompson to be out. So
right.
We're stuck. Like, I wrote a story today where it was actually yesterday, pardon me, that about Michael Rasmussen, who's a very important player for the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
He's moved up. He's on the second line now. He kills their penalty. He kills penalties for them, and their penalty kill has been at 90% for the last month. And all they really are saying, he's out indefinitely, and we don't expect him anytime soon. Like, but what does that tell us? Is he gone for the year? Like what? It's just hard to.
Everything is shrouded in secrecy.
I will eventually be back, Kevin. That's all you need to know. He'll eventually be back.
Yeah. And it's almost it's gotten worse. Like, we thought it couldn't get any worse when it was upper body and lower body. But now I think it is worse because they just leave it so open ended, like So
I would say
so
look
many stories
online.
to talk about. But
Brossoit made the save of the year last night. Like Brossoit had an
Yeah.
amazing game. So
there's so much to talk. I mean, Mike. So what's the other trade? Then we'll get onto that because I know there's a couple things we'll talk about.
The other trade, and we talked about Nito Niederreiter,
Right.
when we were in connection with him
Yeah.
potentially going back to Carolina. I think that might be the steal. Getting him for a second round pick, and he's under contract for another year at $4 million. This is a good forward. That's as good as Poyle did on the Jeannot deal. I think he sold light on the deal for Niederreiter.
Yeah, although nobody wanted to give up a first-round pick on Niederreiter, and I agree with you. And I know Carolina liked him. Like, they didn't really want to lose him. They lost him. It was over money. He thought he was going to get a lot more on the open, but there wasn't a market for him. Like, people like Niederreiter, but they don't love him.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, they like him, and, he can contribute. But, what you see from Niederreiter when he gets 18, 20 goals is really who he is. Like, he's not going to surprise you and get 27 or 28 or 30 or, so I think that was the deal. But I thought Carolina would jump in and get him back just because, and he was popular too in Carolina.
Right, he was, I remember.
Fans liked him. And so I agree with Mike wholeheartedly, but I liked this pick from Winnipeg. It's below the radar, but they got good value. Yeah. He's going to help them. So, and have we moved on? Because I want to talk about what the Predators are up to. Within my chain. At New York Islanders Hockey Now, Stefan Rosner has a good source, and he's been on top of almost all the trades. And he's reporting that there are serious negotiations going on between the Predators and the Islanders. And it's about Wahlstrom. Now, he's injured, but the Predators are looking ahead to the future. And they want Wahlstrom. Now, what he didn't mention, but is the truth, is now Barry Trotz is the heir apparent. He's the guy who's going to replace David Poyle. I'm pretty sure he's not on the sidelines. I'm pretty sure he's in the office. David and Barry are very.
He's in it, and he's consulting, but he has a say.
Yeah, for sure. So Barry Trotz, if they're on Wahlstrom, has put in a good word saying, I want this guy.
Right.
So, we'll see what happens out of that because, the players they might want, I have no idea whether the players will move them. They're probably going to want Eklund. They could use a center as well, Sissons, perhaps, somebody like that as well. So, but I wondered about Duchesne because at one point, Lou Lamoriello had interest in him. Now that was a while back, and a lot has happened since then. So I doubt it. Like,
I don't know if they could fit it, even with a lot of retention. I don't know if they could fit it.
Yeah,
unless a Bailey or somebody like that is going back, and they're making half of what Duchesne is making.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with both of you. I don't really see that happening, but I just remembered that Lamoriello at one point was interested in him, and so
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Nashville is such of the center of things. I know that I think it was Elliot Friedman mentioned on the weekend about Dante Fabro, who seems to be on the outs in Nashville, and he's got connection through playing in college with David Quinn in San Jose. So that maybe Fabro goes in a deal to San Jose. So it's not working there, and with the changeover here, it just seems like they're not. I mean, it's a negative term, flushing the organization, but there definitely is an impetus to change a lot of things after it's been stagnant for a number of years.
So a couple of things. I really feel like Stefan Rosner should have given me the scoop because he plays on my media softball team and I'm his manager. I just saw him a week ago.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to say something to him on that.
Yeah, he does a good job.
He does. No, he's a good guy. He's a really good guy.
Yeah.
But I did just see him literally a week ago. As far as Fabro, I know Nashville for some reason has soured on him. I like Fabro. Anybody who gets Fabro is getting a very good defenseman. I'm sorry. I think he could do better outside of there. Maybe it just didn't fit. And yeah, Trotz going after Wahlstrom. I'm not shocked because Trotz looks at that team and says, we need more goal scoring. And Wahlstrom's got one of the best shots that really hasn't broken out yet. And I know he's coming back from a knee injury. I'd get Wahlstrom at all costs. And I'm sure Trotz will try.
No, Eck, I don't know if you were saying about the save of the weekend. I think the save of the weekend was the Charlie Lindgren save in the Sabres Capitals game where Tage Thompson does a one-timer and knocks the blade off of Charlie Lindgren's right skate.
Yeah.
And he still is able to dive. Like there was a shot from the point. He was still able to dive across the crease with the paddle down and stop the shot. So that
was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I did see that one too. I think the Persois one's a little better.
Yeah, let me just go back to the Predators for two reasons.
Yeah,
First of all,
about that trade, Mario.
Yeah, just the what Russ said about Fabro really likes him. The funny thing about Fabro is, even when he was in with the Predators, he was out. Like they've never liked him.
No, I know you've told me that for years.
They have just they thought he was a little too small, and they just have not been pleased with him. And I think they thought John Hines might sort of bring him around and get him to be, and that really hasn't worked either. So I do think that that's a possibility, and I'm pretty sure with Trotz, you're going to see a little bit of David Poyle in Trotz because they're such tied together. But people have asked me, and I think this is important, like, why hire Trotz without conducting some kind of national search? Is it going to be more of the same? Well, I can't answer the latter because Trotz is his own guy, so it probably will be different. I'm sure he and David disagreed on times on players, but the reason why it makes sense in Nashville to go to Trotz is they're still always worried about their fan base.
Yeah.
Like they're afraid not to make the playoffs because they think it could fall apart. It wasn't all that long ago that we were trying to save the Predators.
I was there.
And even though they seem like, everybody loves Nashville and everybody wants to go to it, they're always concerned about.
That is new, Kevin. That is a new thing.
He's got a cachet with that fan base.
Yeah. And they have got to. They felt like, having a very popular guy like Barry Trotz coming in just sort of makes that transition a little bit easier, and everybody's going to go, oh, it'll be all right, because you remember when Trotz was coach, even when we were bad, we were always competitive.
Right. He was very popular there, and I mean, and they have been so stable. It's ridiculous. There's an argument, maybe we'll have a discussion later, that David Poyle might be one of the greatest GMs of all time. Really, when you think about what's happened with him, it's just the amount of time he's been in the league, the different situations he's been through. He never won a Stanley Cup, unfortunately, but
he saved two franchises. I mean,
he truly did, because the Capitals were in the same place, Mike. You're right. Like the Capitals were in the same place.
I believe he was the one that made the big Langway Engblom deal with Montreal. So I mean that's franchise.
That's the point on Poyle. Like he comes across as a very conservative guy. Doesn't say much. He's very articulate when he speaks about league issues, but he doesn't rock the boat. And yet he really has been one of the most aggressive general managers in terms of trading that you're ever going to see. Look at the deals he's had, things that have happened, trading Shea Weber, bringing in Korea and Forsberg, the trade that Mike just mentioned, acquiring Rod Langway. This guy is a horse trader of the third kind.
He's amazing, and he is so, like, I always call him the Spock of the NHL, because he really reminds me of Spock. I'm not a Star Wars guy, but he reminds me of Spock. And I had a really lucky chance to sit down with him in the media room at one time before Predators game and talk to him for about a half hour, just me and him. The Predators set it up. I just wanted to have a nice discussion with him, and he was really open. He's very funny. Like he's funnier than he acts. Like when he actually relaxes, which isn't very often. But he definitely he ran around. He grew up running around the spectrum in Philadelphia. People don't, his dad was Bud Poyle, who was, the first GM of the Flyers. He was fun to talk about that. He has great memories of that stuff. But he's also the only GM I've ever asked for his phone. Can I have your phone number so I can correspond with you? And he said, just no. There you go. He laughed about it. He's like, well, you're the first one who's ever said it to me. He's like, I take pride in that.
Just an additional detail on that trade that's went down. The first round pick that the Leafs traded in 2025 is top 10 protected. So they're preventing themselves from falling into the same trap as Brian Burke did a few years ago. Sorry, Brian. I mean, like I said, I think this deal improves their depth. Yeah. But I don't think it makes them overly tough, Russ. And I look at the deal that Tampa made, and Jeannot being added to the group that they already have, to me just makes them look like a terror.
I think what this tells me is that Dubas is like, okay, look, I did what I could with the goaltending. I upgraded it. I think I upgraded it. If he couldn't get the toughness you're looking for, he got a shot blocker. And I think that's what they're going to try and do, is just limit Tampa as much as they can, and McCabe will block a lot of shots. If he's healthy, he'll do that. And I think that's an addition that at least gives the Leafs a chance, provided they could score. If the Leafs can't score, it doesn't really matter, Mike. You know.
Well, if the core guys have to perform, and if they don't, they're going to lose. Interesting thing that Steve Simmons said on Bob McCown's podcast a few days ago. He said that, and this was after the O'Reilly deal, that if Dubas was allowed to make that deal, that is proof that Dubas will be back no matter what happens. I don't know about that. I think they have to win a round, but anyway.
Yeah. So one more note about Jeannot. It's not like, look, Jeannot doesn't make a lot of money, so that helped his value, right? But also, Tampa has a lot more guys to create a lot more situations around the net for Jeannot to score than Nashville does. So that's why you can't look at Jeannot goal scoring where it's down to 5 and say, well, he stinks. It's like, well, on Tampa, it's going to be a whole different situation around the net with chances for him.
But he had 20-plus goals last year,
right?
So I mean, he can score. I mean,
he's a rare breed. Like, there are not many of him out there. You know what I mean? And Tampa obviously saw what they wanted, and just like last year, when they went out and traded all that stuff for Hagel, like in Chicago.
But the other reason Tampa can do it is, again, like Mike always says, low-income tax state, so players will go there. They drafted their core. And their core has won cups, and they know how to win, and so they can keep adding on to that core. Most teams can't do that.
And that core is not like 4 or 5 players, because I made the argument with Russ. I said, well, Toronto drafted their core with Marner, Nylander, Matthews, and Riley, and a couple others. But the core for Tampa is a dozen players. It's it's not just Stamkos and Kucherov. It's Cirelli, it's Killorn, it's almost all their defense, and all they have to do is add on the periphery, and that's why. And the most important one is Vasilevsky. He's the guy who saves their bacon a lot of the time. So, no, I'll just say this: it's like, Kev, I didn't think that this deadline would be that busy, and now we're just getting these major things, but we're getting them 4 or 5 days out. I mean, it's going to suck for us from 12 to 4 on Friday, but a lot of stuff happening in between now and then.
I mean, it's early for the trades, but there's still other guys out there that are going to move. So
there's a lot, and this. So I wrote today. I don't know if you're on my tweet today. I said, this is like going to a movie, and the characters you thought were the main characters are killed off in the first half hour. But there's still there's still a lot to happen in this movie.
I'll put this up for sale during the draft day show. I'm going to have some stuff up. It'll be like Swap Shop.
Well, I'm not selling my guitars. Sorry, I'm keeping those.
Are you guys hearing me, or am I coming through?
Yeah.
No, you're coming through.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so Ak, what, I mean, I know that you put something.
Erik Karlsson. Let's talk about Erik Karlsson for a second. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, right? That's where you're going? Yeah, because I think all right, I talk to people who think that they still think this is going to get done, and that Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it could get done if with the right team. I still think, the Edmonton Oilers, have to look at that. And especially, I just think you're just going to run out of chances with this team, and I think bringing in a guy like Karlsson, just amplifies, what a great offensive team, and what kind of team you are. You're not a Boston Bruins type of team. You're a team that needs to score a lot of goals, and I think Erik Karlsson can make that team even more dynamic if that's possible than it is. So I would do that. Then I don't think they've closed the book on it. they may be looking at other options. But it's up to Greer. It's up to Greer. Greer's going to have to go down below $7 million if he wants to do that. And I get it. I mean, I had this conversation with another GM and said, you're pretty easily throwing $4 million, $4.75 million around for the next 4 years, and you have nobody for that.
Right.
So he said, it's not unreasonable for Greer not to want to do that, but if you want to trade him, you're going to have to do it.
Now the thing is, you can only retain a team can only retain on 3 players. They're already retaining on Burns. They're retaining on Meier, but that's only for the rest of the year. Karlsson would be the third, and Karlsson would be 4 more years. So with a roster that they have, where they're probably going to want to try to move out guys like Vlasic and maybe in a year or two Couture. I don't know if you want to limit yourself that way. Now let's put it side by side here. Let's put it side by side here. There are rumors about them checking in on Ekholm.
Yeah.
In my mind, Ekholm makes a lot more sense for them than Karlsson. I know everybody's saying just go balls out offensive, just go wide open, throttle open.
That's not what they're saying. What they're saying, Mike, is put Karlsson on a puck possession team and make it a better puck possession team, and then you limit the other team's chances when you've got the puck all the time. And there's no doubt that they'll have the puck more.
Yeah, the first 100-point defenseman probably in 20 years.
Like it's not even that isn't close to the way they're looking.
But to me, Kevin, what I say about that is this, and this is what 2 PMs said to me yesterday. Like, if it is just about the $7 million, it's getting done. That's what they both said, because they really think if they've already worked out the actual terms of the players and stuff like that, they can get a third, a fourth team, whatever they need to get involved. They can find a way to get it done if it's just about that.
But here's my other thing. I think Ken Holland could have a laundry list here, and he could just say, all right, Greer, we don't have a deal done. Fine, I'll go to Ekholm. But I think Trotz is going to keep Ekholm. They can look at Klingberg. Maybe Klingberg's not right. They can look at Sanheim. They can look at Gavrikov. Like, there's enough defensemen out there that he will get one, and he doesn't have to, hang around and wait for Greer.
Yeah, but, the deal is, I mean, if you don't get Karlsson, I mean, then it makes sense to get Ekholm. You know what I mean? Like,
do you think Trotz has given up Ekholm?
No, I don't either. But I'm just saying it would make sense for them to do that. My point is, they're not trying to get an offensive defenseman here. They're trying to get Karlsson because he is such a huge difference maker.
So unique.
So, like, they may just look at the defensive thing completely different. Like, I don't think Klingberg, for example.
Okay, but Gavrikov, I mean, they'll just go to him.
Yeah, if that's the way they want to go, yeah. So,
right. But that's the interesting thing right now is that the rumor was that Gavrikov with Boston was going for a 1 and a 3, and then Boston pivoted and went with Orlov and Hathaway for a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. So now Yarmo's out there with 4 days left to go before the deadline. And I don't know how many teams out there are going to be willing to pay a first-round pick for Gavrikov. I think he's good. I like him. He's a physical, left shot, tough defenseman. But I think now that Toronto's out of the market because they got McCabe, is Edmonton like the only team? And maybe there are maybe 1 or 2 others. And I don't know if he can get a bidding war to get the price that he could have gotten from Boston. So he's sort of in a pickle right now. And there's a glut of defensemen out there right now.
Yeah, no, they really are. Now I wanted to talk a little bit before, because it's 2:00. I wanted to discuss the standings, because the races are getting crazier. Like, I know Ottawa's got 2 games coming up with Detroit, Kevin. Everybody's talking about that's like a big deal, because Ottawa wins those 2 games, they'll be tied with the Red Wings, and then everything. If they lose those 2 games, they'll be 8 points back, and that the season's over. So this is obviously Ottawa's season on the line right now.
And what about those hard-charging Sabres?
All right, and I want to talk about that, Mike. I watched that game yesterday against the Capitals. All right, that is the first time I'm watching the Sabres, and I'm watching a team that has been in the playoffs a long time, the Capitals, and late in the season, and I'm really
Capitals. They're not the same.
No, I know they're not the same team, but just the fact that I feel like the Sabres have officially, in my mind, passed the Capitals is interesting. Like, I mean, that's like, because when could you say the Sabres have passed the Capitals, like, in your head, right? Like, you feel that at all? Like I was watching that game and I'm like, the Sabres are better.
I think that's safe to say. I just don't think that puts them in the playoffs.
It doesn't put them in the playoffs, but it's a monumentous thing for the Sabres. For the Sabres, it's a monumentous moment because it's like they've got to pass these teams, that everybody puts ahead of them all the time, and that's Capitals are one of them.
Yeah. Well, nothing supports Mike's tirade about how they need to get a goalie more than the fact that they're one of the top 3 offensive teams in the league, and they're not yet near the playoffs. Like,
right.
I mean, that's. I'd like to know how often that has happened.
There are 3 teams that are hard looking at goalies, right? Like we know this, right? We know.
Well, Tage Thompson's a top 5 player in this league.
For sure, yeah.
And Alex Tuck got hurt. They bring up Hinostroza. He scores a goal and says Dylan Cousins gets a hat trick. They have a ton of talent up front. Krebs is playing well right now.
Yeah.
But in the 3 games that they've won since they lost to Toronto, they played Comrie. He let 5 goals in against Tampa. Craig Anderson is probably in traction still from making 49 saves against Florida, and Luukkonen gave up 4 to the Capitals. If they get themselves a goalie who just makes them, I mean, Anderson, if he could play all the time, would be the answer, but he can't because he's 41. Yeah. They need a goaltender. If they got Korpisalo or somebody else out there, I think this team makes the playoffs. I just wonder whether Kevin Adams will do it or not.
I'm still raising my objection to Korpisalo, but I get it.
Yeah.
But he won. He had to win the other day. It looked pretty big. So
I mean, Anderson was unbelievable against the Panthers this weekend. That game. I mean, that was the Panthers threw everything. I mean, that was the Florida Panthers team from last year. Basically, that's how good they looked. They had 51 shots. They were just pounding the Sabres.
This is the problem with the Panthers. They're going to be desperate like that every game now because the half the season that they had was garbage.
Yeah, well, it is going to be interesting. I think it'll be fun if the Red Wings never get back into the playoffs. They will always have that they were in a playoff position for 24 hours. They were in a playoff position, and then I remember afterward, David Perron said, the problem when you have this many teams is, you're off for like a day or two, and 4 different teams have won.
Yeah.
And you get then you look at the standings and you're 4 points back,
right?
And you feel like, God, we're right back where we started, and that's exactly what's happened. They were in a playoff spot. They lost to Tampa Bay just because they were totally dominated Tampa Bay,
right?
But they lost because Vasilevsky was
unbelievable,
otherworldly, and now they're 3 back and they're 5 back from the Islanders.
And let's see where they're going to end up at the end. All right, because I brought this. This has changed since the last couple of days. This weekend, we're winning record again. This 6 games over 500 in the first 3 games. This first 3 days this thing's been out. So right now, it does have the wild cards. Now Tampa's moved past Toronto, which is interesting. It does have the wild card of now Buffalo and Florida, 95 and 95. The Islanders at 94, Detroit at 9. Pittsburgh at 94, Detroit at 91.
I know. This is based on a computer program, but the funny thing is that Tampa loses 7-3 to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I know.
And Toronto.
Let me give you a little secret about that, Mike. Here's what happened, and my wife apologizes for this. She flipped on about 10 of the games. She flipped the home and away to what they were supposed to be.
Okay.
And so this is a correct version of that. Okay, it didn't affect the game so far picked, and now that's why that is. So I apologize for the original thing. This is actually what the computer is saying. But all the right home and aways.
But this is the interesting thing about just optically looking at the standings right now, and what Kevin was just saying before. Okay, Washington is tied with Detroit and Florida.
Yeah.
But Washington has played 4 more games than the Red Wings. So Washington, Brian McClellan basically says we're done by trading Orlov and Hathaway. Not that they're going to lay down, but they traded the guys and they're supposedly shopping Nick Jensen and Trevor Van Riemsdyk and other rental guys on their team. Now, Florida is 1 less game than them, and all of a sudden, we're starting to hear Radko Gudas rumors.
I don't buy it at all. I know it's out there, but I don't buy it from my sources, at least. It's and not to say that won't change by Friday, but I don't buy. And Gudas is a valuable player, but he's also a popular player there, and I think he's one of those guys that's maybe more valuable for them to hold on to, and then give up. But here's the Western Conference with Edmonton out of the playoffs right now.
Before you do the East, there is an email a tweet that's out. The player safety department's gonna talk to Keandre Miller over the spitting incident, and he got a match penalty. He's getting at least a game, and I know he said it was a mistake or not on purpose. He said it wasn't on purpose. How do you tell that? I watched the video 3 times. There's no way of telling that. So he's going to get suspended, and this could complicate what they're doing for Patrick Kane because, again, the shorter you make your team, then you have a guy who's – I don't know what happens if a guy is suspended, what that's going to do to their cap and this whole stringing along of trying to get, cap money each day because they played Ryan Carpenter in that game who wasn't supposed to play. He played 3 seconds. Again, they couldn't save the money on him because he had to sit in the penalty box for Miller. So I don't know what's going to happen with this whole thing. I'm sure they're going to get him, but it may be a thing that's a bridge too far for the Rangers to do it at some point.
I don't think that's going to happen, but it is a crazy creative thing, Russ.
I agree with you. Weren't they supposed to put Lindgren on LTIR, Russ?
But they didn't.
They didn't.
Yeah.
That's the other part of this.
Well, that's the reason probably is, Kev, is because they would have to sit him out 10 games or 3. I think it's like 23 days. Those are limitations, and he probably would be back before then. So they don't want to block that out in terms.
That's the other complication.
Couple things quick, and I'll get this off the screen for you guys. So Edmonton now, this is so tight. And even though the Eastern Conference battle is good, the Western Conference battle is not a slouch either. Actually, for these spots here, because
I agree with this.
You agree with the way this is going to land? I know you don't like it. I agree that I think Edmonton. I personally feel Edmonton's going to make the playoffs. There is a boost, by the way, that in my formula that if you get a player that's in your top 6 or your top 4, so so you're going to see the Devils got that boost from Myers. You can see Kane giving Rangers that boost kind of thing. There is a boost that comes from that.
I still think Edmonton comes in ahead of Winnipeg. I know Winnipeg got Niederreiter, but they lost Perfetti, and Perfetti is such a good player. He was 3rd or 4th on their team in scoring.
He doesn't have that many goals. No, he doesn't have that many points that I saw. I mean, I remember looking at it and saying like that. I thought he had more points than he did.
We had 30 points, I think.
How many?
30.
Does he? How many goals does he have?
I'll check it out.
4? I think he's got 4 goals or 5.
Doesn't matter how many goals he has.
Perfetti has 30 points, 8 goals, 22 assists.
8 goals. Okay, I thought for some reason I thought he had more than.
He's on pace for 45 points.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's a big player, but they should be able to replace him. He's
a smart player. He's not. Niederreiter can score some goals. He's not as smart. He's not as fast. There's a lot of things to Perfetti's game besides points.
The tough thing about the specific is, can you think of 3 teams that could use goalie help more than the Kings, Vegas, and Seattle?
I'll say this because I watched the Leafs play Seattle yesterday. Philip Grubauer could be the worst contract that was signed for a goaltender in the last 5 years. Martin Jones is out goaltending him in Seattle, and they had to pull him after 4 goals against Toronto. If I agree, LA supposedly is in on Talbot. If Talbot is being shopped by Ottawa, and Ottawa will make that decision in the next couple of days. Vegas, I think, has to be looking at a goaltender with what Kevin was saying with Logan Thompson, his health in question, and Seattle. I mean, I think there are 4 or 5 teams that should be looking for goaltenders.
Yeah, I'm going to say this with LA, they have to do something because Quick got pulled from the game with the Rangers, and they only had 4 defensemen.
This is a team that they got. I mean, Corpusalo, they have to get Corpusalo. They have to get. Jake Allen, I think, is a good chance of moving to one of those teams.
I don't think they're moving Jake Allen.
No,
I don't. I mean, I guess I can certainly be wrong, but that's not. I haven't heard that that they're moving Jake Allen, but Corpusalo, Reimer, I think both those guys could go.
And how about John Gibson, who came up yesterday too?
The Kings will get torched in the playoffs if Phoenix copies.
I would like to believe that John Gibson is out there because I feel a lot of sympathy for John Gibson being just exposed. Jeff Merrick compared him to Gilles Malache, and we're old enough to all remember that.
Yeah.
Very good goaltender with a crappy Seals team, and he only got recognition when he played with Minnesota and they made the cup in 81 and Beaupre was the starter. But he was a really good goaltender who just played for a lot of crappy teams. And Gibson has got to get out of there. But he may like somebody else. Yeah, he may like it in Southern California. That's
and I still think, again, he's a guy that's got to be traded in the off season.
Right.
You know, where you have more, the more teams that will be looking at reviewing their goaltending.
Agreed.
You know, you're trying to move a salary like that in this cap situation. It's too hard. So,
agreed.
I don't see it.
Well, Vegas has the money to do it though, right now, because they still have money. They
don't have the assets. You know, you're gonna have to give up.
The assets. That's the worry.
I mean, you're gonna have to, and you're also you're trading within your division, which probably is not a big deal, but might be.
A team like Buffalo would make the most sense.
Buffalo makes a ton of sense, but that's not going to happen. I don't think, but it could. I mean, Buffalo does need to get a goalie if they're going to be serious about this playoff run. But
yeah,
Kevin, do you think that you could see? I mean, those three teams. I mean, not Seattle perhaps because they're going to go with what they have, but the Kings and the Knights are in solid playoff spots.
Yeah, I mean, we'll know what Vegas. You know, Vegas may know more about Logan Thompson. They're letting on. So.
Yeah.
So they might, if they know he's coming back in 2 weeks,
then
they have to do. They don't have to do anything, but the Kings have to do something. It would make sense for Buffalo to do something as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So if Cam Talbot is going to go to the Kings, that leaves Reimer and Korpisalo still. So
Right.
And I think both of those are upgrades from what they have right now. And the waiver wire just came out a few minutes ago, and Harrington, who was involved in the trade, got sent down, is on waivers, and Michael Hauser, who the Sabres always sign every year as a depth goaltender to go down to Rochester. They just signed him and put him on waivers. That signifies to me that they're not going to send Luukkonen back to Rochester because they need a goalie in the AHL. So right now they're comfortable with the three goalies, but I don't think they should be comfortable because I don't think it's good enough to make the playoffs.
Yeah, the fans deserve the playoffs in Buffalo. So
they do, but at the same time, it's like what's their future in the playoffs in this year if they look at who they're going to play? I mean, it
doesn't matter. 11 years, you got to do that. I mean,
I agree.
I
agree. No, but how much you want to give up for the goalie to do that?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't think they have to give up a ton for James Reimer or for Korpisalo. You're talking a third-round pick.
Korpisalo is going to be hard to get, believe it or not, because LA, Vegas.
Right. I mean, okay, there's a competition out there for goaltenders, but I'm saying, the Sabres have enough draft capital that if they have to give up a second-round pick,
they've got them.
End of the world, and they're so low in the organization. This town wants them to make the playoffs more than anything. Everybody's excited, but they want this to end, and they need to facilitate that by making a deal.
Yeah,
I want them to make the playoffs. They're exciting.
Well, for sure they are, and I do think. I mean, it does look bad when you have an offense like Buffalo and you can get in the playoffs because they've got talented defensemen too. They're just young, So and I think it would be a fun story to go back and look when a top 3 scoring team didn't make the playoffs. I'd be surprised if it's happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I would be
surprised. I don't think it has. I mean, top 3.
I mean, they're a pre. I mean, every time you turn around, Buffalo has 5 or more goals.
I know, and they play so exciting. They remind me of Florida last year, where Florida was scoring all like crazy goals.
Yeah,
but no lead is safe.
No, they give up like 4 a game.
Yeah, they give up a lot. If you go look at what is a natural stat trick? Yeah, whatever. Yeah. They give up so many high danger scoring chances.
Yeah.
So.
It's crazy. And Anderson can play well, but he can't ride a playoffs.
He can't play more than once a week. That's apparently the
he's just up there. So anyway, that's fun show, guys. This is going to be a crazy fun week. I'm not worried. Go ahead, Russ. You have something else for you? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Russ.
I was going to say Kevin will back me up. Satchel Paige used to pitch like once a week, and he was in his rocking chair the other time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, there you go.
Wait, you're saying Kevin's old enough to remember Satchel Paige?
Yeah.
Greg Anderson is the new Satchel Paige. All right.
He pitched in 1948, Russ.
No. He played for a long time.
No, but in the majors.
We used to goalies in the 40s were a staple back in the old days. I mean, guys just stayed forever. Glenn Hall, those guys, they were
Johnny Bauer.
Yeah, they played a long time.
They really did. That's awesome.
No mask at 40.
No mask. They just played, and they played like all the games too.
I played street hockey with no mask, and look at me now.
There you go. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We got a great week ahead of us, guys. This is only the first. It's like a 5-day trade deadline week. Enjoy it.